What impact is the Trumpian world order having on geoeconomics? That's one of the running themes here in Davos, and that's what we want to now discuss with another very special guest who joins us. Professor Eswar Prasad is professor at Cornell University, also at Brookings, and he's just come out, Professor, with a book appropriately titled The Doom Loop: Why the World Economic Order is Spiraling into Disorder.
Yes, that is the book, which, as you say, is just out. Yes.
And it's perhaps appropriate because what we are seeing around us is extreme disorder, the possibility now of a Europe-US trade war spiraling out of control, tariffs across the world. Do you believe, therefore, that 2026 will see even more chaos and disorder, and therefore making any predictions of the future is becoming extremely difficult?
So the main thesis of my book is that instability is becoming the norm rather than just a cycle that we are going through and where we go back to stability. In fact, when I started working on the book, I had a different thesis in mind. I had this vision that we were starting from a unipolar world when the Soviet Union fell apart. The US became the dominant power in every dimension in the 1990s. We are moving to a world where economic power is at least more evenly distributed. And for an economist, competition is good because it generates efficiency, stability, balance. But as I thought about all the forces that should take us back towards this new equilibrium, I started realizing that in fact they might create instability rather than stability. One of the forces, for instance, is globalization, and there's been a lot of discussion at Davos about what the future of globalization is. Now, trade is something that brings a lot of benefits, so I don't think we're going to see trade between countries cease. But what is happening is that trade is fragmenting along geopolitical lines. In other words, countries that are seen as geopolitical allies trade more with each other, have more financial ties. So that does not mean that trade or finance are backing off. But one very important implication is that globalization used to be seen as a positive-sum game that could offset to some extent the zero-sum game of geopolitics, where one country's influence comes at the expense of another. Now that balancing force is gone, and even if we think about, as you mentioned, the geopolitical fragmentation, even what we used to think of as a traditional alliances, the West, the emerging market countries, and those aligned with China and Russia, for instance, even those are splintering right now. So the world order is at some level splintering before our very eyes.
And